We have with us members Greg Vrieslar, Richard Orovitz, Yusuf Olive, and Mayor Mike Safarian. We also have Jim Gilmore, as I'm going through the list, Paul Roman and Tina Evans, and the applicant Greg Hillebrand. I'm not sure who that is on Andrea's phone.
That's me, Mark. That's
Okay.
my-
And Ben, you are?
I'm Greg's attorney.
Okay. What's your last name for the record?
Ben Sutter.
Okay.
Sutter.
We are here by video conference with the authority of Governor DeWine's signature on House Bill 197, Amendment 3, and specifically Section G0351-2, which authorizes the City of Oregon Planning Commission to hold this hearing by way of Zoom, as well as open to streaming on the Oregon website. And we're making available by call-in anyone with questions or comments that we will ask for. You may call in the Oregon phone number of 419-698-7081, and we will either listen to your telephone call, or we will have Lee, I believe that's going to, or Tina, that will ask the question for you. If Lee would call the roll regarding the members, please.
Mayor Safarian,
Here.
Yusuf Olive,
Here.
Greg Vrieslar,
Here.
Richard Orovitz,
Here.
Chairman Winkowski.
Here, thank you. And I'm going to skip through everything else. We're going to go to the open application of CUE 173-20. It's a conditional use in an A1 agricultural zone district for the purpose of a family cemetery on the property described as parcel number 44-93251. Applicant is Julie Hillebrand. The location is 1745 South Wind Road, and I see that Greg Hillebrand is online with us here, and their attorney, Ben Sutter.
Ben Sutter, yes.
Sutter. Okay, thank you. Mr. Gilmore.
Looks like he's muted.
I can't hear Jim.
Sorry, I'm gonna let Mark present this.
Okay, great.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Mark.
So basically, what we're applying for is a conditional use in an A1 agricultural district for the purpose of a family cemetery. And it's going to be located behind the house, between the house and the pond. And it's on a 5-acre parcel. Is there anything else you need me to say, Jim? Or
I guess what did our committee come up with? Any suggestions or anything they added to it, Mark?
the committee did not have any opposition to it. There was no problem with it. I guess it's done pretty. It's pretty common in history to have this done. Not very usual now, but back in the history, this was pretty common. They had no problem with it.
Oregon City Council is Kelly.
Mark, did they want any conditions put on it at all?
No, I guess one thing they said, if they did sell the property, they would exhume the file.
Thank you. First, Mr. Hillebrand, certainly we want to extend our condolences to you and your family regarding this situation. And, you know, obviously the outcome of this is certainly not dependent on our feelings on how we feel about what's happened to you and your family. So
I appreciate that.
we will move forward. Jim, my only question right off the bat is, have we done this in the past, and have we done this? Is this something that you have been able to identify as something that's back anytime in the past?
No, this was new for us. And I think Mike Beasley did the investigation on it. And that it has been done in the past history. I just wasn't aware of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
I was just going to say that it has been done, and when there's agricultural zoning, it requires only a conditional use. Other zone properties would require more permits than this would. So really, especially when the Hildebrand said if they were ever going to vacate the property, they would also vacate the premise of this cemetery or burial. So with that in mind, I certainly have no objections, and I think it's perfectly. I think it goes very far into the past when these things happened. It was more traditional back then, but
Right.
I think that the caveat that says that if they leave, they leave the premises or leave the property, that they take the remains from the site, and I think that makes it all fine.
Absolutely. Mr. Hillebrand, would you like to address the panel?
No, I mean, obviously, thanks for obviously, considering this and, obviously circumstances I couldn't be there, none of us can with all this stuff going on, but, I kind of reached out to Mike Beasley about this just because, we've worked together. We worked with the city of Oregon often and kind of just knew him, and pretty much this is what my wife wanted. This is what I wanted. We, just thought this would be the best thing for us during our whole process of how we wanted to go about it and kind of memorialize him. So this is what we kind of just felt was right. And, obviously we hope you guys, grant us that permission so we don't have any issues, and just kind of, really don't have much to add to that, obviously just, obviously we wish we weren't here, but we are. And obviously we're just hoping you can obviously accommodate, our request, and, we would greatly appreciate that.
Mr. Sauter, do you have anything?
I would just like to briefly speak on behalf of my client. Just so everybody is aware, there is, like we've said, a statutory exception for family cemetery in the Ohio Revised Code. It is, like many have said, a practice of tradition. It isn't something that is done very readily anymore, but it is still a valid exception in the Ohio Revised Code. Further, the Oregon Administrative Code allows for cemeteries in A1 districts by conditional use, which is why we're all here. My client has, in fact, expended a great deal of resources to make this possible. And as it's already been pointed out, he wants, the whole point of this is to allow the child to remain with not only his mom and dad, but also his two sisters that are still alive and still fighting. They want them to grow up together. They want them to be together as much as possible, which I think that any mom and dad who has ever gone through anything like this would be able to understand. In addition, and Greg, I hope you don't mind me speaking out about this, but they've gone through some estate planning processes to make sure that all the intents that are being discussed here are fully carried out. That the property will be cared for, that the gravesite will be cared for. They've expended additional funds with the funeral services to make sure that it's a smooth a process for the maintenance and for the externment if that ever needed to be done. But ultimately, to the extent that this property can remain, if not with Greg and Julie, then within a family member who would want this use on the property. Greg and Julie have gone very, very far to make sure that that is in existence and that the property will be maintained. That was the only thing that I would like to add, but I am available if anybody has any other questions about it.
No, thank you. Anyone else have any additional comments? Lee or Tina, have you guys received any phone calls or any mailings or any letters from anyone regarding this matter?
I have received one letter from a neighbor, Samantha Erdman. She lives at 1655 South Wind Road. And she says her and her husband have no problems with whatever they want to do on their property. They believe they have the right to choose what they want.
Okay, great, thank you.
No, I haven't gotten any calls yet. We can leave it open for a little bit, a few minutes, and see if we get any. Just kind of wait and see.
I wouldn't think we would need to, Tina. I wouldn't think we would need to wait very long because I think if somebody had concerns, I think they would have expressed it.
Yeah.
And I would just like to further comment as a person who my mother passed away when I was a young child. My wife passed away when my kids were young. My younger brother died. So I'm a person who have been around a lot of people near and dear to me had died. And this isn't something I myself would choose to do, but we each can deal with death in a different way. And so if it works for somebody, more power to them. And so it's not on the strength that we have done this before. If we had never done this before, I would think it was a proper use in the area, and I would still be for it. So with that condition that if they did leave the property, they took care of the remains. So I think we're a board that's supposed to be hearing reasonable requests, and if this is something that gives someone peace, I'm all for it.
Mayor, I couldn't agree more. The floor is open for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Orovitz.
I did have a question about the future of the property. As it has been stated, this was a very common practice many, many years ago. And then it is still common practice, I'm sure, in a lot of communities. But my question is for Ben. Moving forward, let's just say 100 years from now, what are the conditions on the sale of that property? Or I guess I'm just looking to the far off future about this.
Greg, do I have your permission to speak on this specifically with regard to your estate plan and what we talked about?
Absolutely.
In regard to that, what we've done is we've set up basically a trust so that the property will be maintained, and as long as a Hillebrand family member is willing to live in that property, that they will do so on the condition that they maintain the grave site and the burial site for Griffin. If a Hillebrand family member cannot afford to, if there was ever a reason that Greg and Julie passed away and the house was to be sold, what we've done is that wherever Greg and Julie were to be buried, we've set aside specific funds so that we can extend those remains to be buried with Greg and Julie. The whole point of this is so that the family can stay together as a family unit. And if Greg and Julie weren't on the property and a family member weren't on that property, Greg and Julie have both said that they wouldn't want it to be there in the first place. They would want those remains to be with the family, and so that they can be buried together as a family. So I hope that answers your questions. If you have other specific concerns, I'm happy to address those with Greg's permission.
So the intent is not to have this as a family cemetery area. It's not going to be expanded, God forbid, but it's not going to be expanded upon years and years down the road.
That is not the intent. And Greg, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But
I can answer that one. Obviously, we're still not out of the woods with our other two children. So
right.
Heaven forbid something happened there. That would be the only thing that we, would even explore probably doing. I'm not going to sit here. I don't know. If that were to happen, we would just be in a bad place anyway. So, I'm not going to sit here and speak about that. But if we were to lose one, or, maybe even not even one of these two children, but maybe a child in the future, depending on the situation, that would be the only, this is meant for our kids. This isn't meant for like a grandparent. This is meant for my wife, myself, and our current daughters and any future children we would have. And that is strictly it. And that's what I kind of advised Ben. That's what we wanted to do. And that's what I told, my request to him was put my house into a trust. I'll create a trust fund And for the rest of my life, and as long as there's a Hillebrand alive, that's who will be responsible for this property. And if not, I mean, I will set up, we'll have enough money set aside to fund the trust and maintain everything for, I mean, hundreds of years. I mean, truthfully.
And just some additional information, they've gone so far as to name a corporate fiduciary in the event a family fiduciary is unable to serve, so that there will always be somebody in existence that understands the intent of this property to maintain that pursuant to that intent. And if, like we said, Greg and Julie or somebody else has passed away and they go to a more traditional cemetery, this is a very easy restoration process to get this property to what the condition it is in right now. We've worked with the funeral director to make sure that the vault and casket are all in a single unit, so that if ever it had to be removed, that isn't like there's concrete barriers in place here. It's all part of one single unit that's easily put in and easily taken out in the event the property needs to be restored. So, and again, this conditional use permit is strictly for the remains of Griffin. That's the only thing that's been applied for here. And hopefully the only thing that will need to be applied for ever, so.
And excuse me for having to ask those questions, but I just, like I said, I'm looking to the far future. And as I'm sure some of us have seen, family cemeteries on the side of the road, you know, that were there over 100 years ago and have multiple generations. And I just was wondering, you know, what the intent was here. And like I said, I'm so sorry to have to ask, but that was just one question I had on my mind.
No, we understand.
That was it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for.
Mr. Chairman, I have no objections to this. As long as they follow the state of Ohio, I'm sure there's rules and regulations on how to proceed with this, and I'm sorry to hear your loss.
I can both compliment Mr. Hillebrand and Ben. You guys are more prepared than anyone I've had come before this committee over the last 12 years. So the questions that we have actually been a little higher, at a higher level than our normal questioning and things like that. So you should be commended for a job well done. And I'll make the motion. I move to pass CUE 173-20 with the only caveat that any remains that are interred on that property stay with the family if the family leaves the premises.
I'll second the motion.
Lee, that was my motion. Mr. Orovitz was the second. If you would call the roll.
Chairman Winkowski,
Yes.
Mr. Orovitz,
Yes.
Mayor Safarian,
Yes.
Mr. Olive,
Yes.
Mr. Vrieslar.
Yes.
Mr. Hillebrand, again, our condolences and good luck with your two daughters, and hopefully they can live a happy, healthy life. And your wife and you are in our prayers, that's for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'm going to now adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for getting together. It's good to see some faces. Thanks, Tina.
Matt,
Thanks,
do you
Karis.
want to approve the minutes? Do you want to approve the minutes from the prior meeting, the February 18th meeting?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Everyone in favor of approval of the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting minutes are hereby approved, and we are therefore adjourned.
Thank you. Good luck,
Okay.
Mr. Hillebrand.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Everybody.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.